Welcome to the PIO podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
So 20 with Nelly Miles. Can't believe we already hit 20 episodes already. Enjoy.
Good afternoon. Today on the podcast, we have Nelly Miles. She's a public affairs director from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Nelly, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Glad to be here.
How did it come about that you got the position as the director of public affairs?
Well, it was an interesting path there that I took. I actually started at the GBI in forensics. I was a forensic drug chemist for a number of years, testing drug cases because my degree is in chemistry. I was pre-med a long time ago, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I took a turn in my career and started with the GBI. And I ended up managing the forensic chemistry unit for the state and worked in forensic chemistry for 16 years. And towards the end of that career, we would get a lot of media inquiries about these changing drug trends, and the media wanted, they wanted information, they wanted folks to go on camera, and the public affairs folks like, well, what about her? I mean, she seems like she can communicate it. And I did an interview or two, and I'd go under the Gold Dome and testify about the drug trends because that was part of the public affairs work. And I don't know, it was just something about it. It really clicked. It was just interesting to me. And so I sort of planted seeds with, certain people in the agency, and I just kind of put it out there for a few years that, hey, if you ever have, a spot for maybe like an understudy in public affairs, because I wanted to frame it like, I'm not saying I'm trying to ditch the crime lab. I'm just saying that, maybe an additional responsibility I can help out. And, it just parlayed its way into a full-time career.
So no news media background or anything like that. It was all chemistry and forensic end of it.
It was all science.
Wow.
I was pre-med. So my degree is in chemistry, and I fulfilled my pre-med requirements, and I was applying to med school. And I just kind of decided to take a turn. I'm first generation. My parents are from Nigeria. If you know anything about West African parents, you pretty much have three options: doctor, lawyer, teacher. So I just picked doctor, and I went on that path. And then after how many years, I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to do this. Is there something else I can do with this chemistry degree? Because I worked really hard to obtain this degree, and I wanted to use it. Even if it was for 2 minutes, I was going to use the degree. So here I am.
Well, that's definitely a nonlinear way of getting there. I mean, that's certainly not the norm, but you do a very good job, and you're always active out there. And I really wish this year I could get to the PIO mid-year conference. I can't make it this year because of this injury, and I'm not going to probably make the NAO conference either because of this, because that would be like all summer, but it is what it is. So how many people work out of your office?
Well, including me, there are 2 of us.
Oh, wow.
So we don't have a very large unit. So we certainly have enough work for more than 2 people.
For the entire state of Georgia, there's only 2 of you.
There's only
Wow.
2 of us. It's quite the load, but it's such fascinating work, obviously representing an agency that's so multifaceted, not just the investigative division, but when you include the crime lab and our crime information center, it's just so interesting. So it's almost like it's almost worth it that, you're, all of these hours that you're putting in, because there's so much value that you're getting back for what you're
Wow,
giving.
that's amazing. And on top of that, I also noticed that you're the Southeast Vice Chair for the IACP's PIO section, correct?
That's right. That's right. That was just amazing.
So let's talk about how this additional role means, what it means to you, and what does it mean to the PIOs in the Southeast there?
Well, when I was talking about the transition, not having any communications background, when I started in public affairs 6 years ago, one of the things that I just undervalued was training. I just didn't know. I mean, in the crime lab, there's, very strict policies and procedures, and you have to complete a training program before you can even open up, a piece of evidence. And in the PIO world, it was a little bit different. And so, most of what I did in the beginning was just like, kind of trial by fire, on the job training. Okay, what worked? But we had incidents that would be in the media for maybe a day or two, especially because being a state level criminal investigative agency, we do respond to a lot of officer involved shootings, and we're responsible for getting that information out. But I felt like I could contain that. And so in 2018, I joined the PIO section. I'd already engaged with the IACP, and then I was exposed to all of these, this whole network of people who, had all of these different, best practices, and just had so much knowledge, Chris Cook, Katie Nelson, Chris Young, Genevieve Judge. I saw these presentations, and I was just opened up to this whole new world. And so I started, getting this training, getting this network. And in 2020, Katie Nelson reached out to me when she was running and said, hey, would you consider being a vice chair? And I'll be honest, Robert, I was just thinking, I have 3 small children, and the GBI is enough. And I just was like, nah, I love you, but I can't help you out. I just wasn't ready for any leadership roles. I said, maybe down the road, but it's Katie Nelson. And she was just hard to say no to. So I was like, okay, you know what? I think that we did a lot in 2020 as an agency. And I think that the IACP PIO section has given me a lot. So maybe I can return the favor now.
Awesome. Let's talk about some of the incidents that the GBI has ended up handling and how you got involved. And you don't need to go in great detail, but what kind of things did you guys have to deal with?
Well, what we saw in 2020 was obviously being in the middle of a pandemic, coupled with the civil unrest after the murder of George Floyd. That we had a lot of attention on what police agencies were doing, and we just got ourselves in the middle of a couple cases that were connected to viral videos, and the first one being the Ahmaud Arbery murder investigation, and then there was an officer involved shooting, Rayshard Brooks, and then towards the end of the year we were embedded in having to assist with the presidential election in doing counting absentee ballots and doing an audit of votes. And so it was a very wild year. And as far as public affairs was concerned, I don't think it comes as a surprise. Everybody wanted to know what was happening. And so we were having 24/7 monitoring social media. We were holding press conferences and streaming them. We were responding to just even non-media, hundreds upon hundreds of inquiries from the public about what we were doing and filing complaints, and numerous press conferences and daily messaging on our social media platforms, utilizing all of them, and then some. So it was quite heavy, just making sure that once we did become involved, especially in the Ahmaud Arbery case, because it did, take some days before our agency became involved, that we weren't silent, that we were constantly feeding the public with the information.
In almost all of those cases, not only did you have local attention, you had national and international attention. The Ahmaud Arbery case, it kind of blew up as it moved forward, and it really grabbed a lot of international attention. And then we go to that presidential election and how that even made it more confusing. And then you have to be able to do your messaging at the same time. So
absolutely,
what happened did you guys get hit with trolls or anything like that along some of these incidents that you were having, or bots that were hitting you guys, your networks, like the social media sites, things like that?
We had a lot of trolls, a lot of trolls. And just the flood of inquiries and comments that came in. It was nonstop from, I would say, the Ahmaud Arbery to the presidential election. Now, with the Ahmaud Arbery case, just because of where a lot of people, what their position was on that case, it was more, I think people were consistently just kind of fired up about the fact that it took a certain amount of time before, arrests actually happened. But when it came to, I would say, trolls, we probably had the worst with presidential election. It was just insane. So it was just one of those things that it's depressing to, constantly doom scroll, but it was so important that we stayed on it. And I mean, it was just constant monitoring. I know it's just two of us, but we did not sleep during that time. It's just one of those things where we just said, let's just make it through 2020. We're just going all in. Eventually this has to pass. And so, yeah, we were on that. We were on all our accounts, responding to messages. There were a lot of things that we would have to correct, lots of misinformation, always issuing statements, making sure that we communicated with our partners. So it was very intense. But I think the key is, I know it sounds bad when I say just two people, for the entire state. I mean, that certainly is rough, but I think that what makes us really successful is that we really leverage our command staff when it comes to, kind of creating like a bit of a think tank. Hey, the top of the day, it's like, okay, this is the major issue for the day regarding this incident. This is our plan. And, it's literally at the top of the day. It wasn't do you think we should put a statement out today? No, we get up every day knowing you cannot stay quiet, especially when you're dealing with something like a viral video, which we had a couple of. I mean, I think people, some agencies think that because it's, it's an open investigation or it's active, that, they can probably say put out one statement and then that's it, and they just go silent. But every single day we were just like, okay, what can we say today? Because, the folks need to know that it's important to us, that we're engaged, that we're listening to them, that we care. And so it was something every day. It was, I mean, even if it was, just a plea to be patient while we're working on some things and appealing to, their emotions and, talking about the justice we're trying to deliver to the family. Because, there was one post that stood out where we said that this incident didn't just leave one victim. It left, the family as well as victims. And so we're, pleading for patience, and this is what we're working on, although we don't have an update, but we can tell you this is where we're at. And so I think that is something that we miss, because you see all these messages and you want to just cave because you feel overwhelmed, but you got to push through and just say, you know what, we're still going to give them something. Hey, we had a situation, Robert, where there was a note that was circulating. A reporter found a note near the scene in South Georgia. And I don't know if you remember this, but TMZ, they got a hold of the note. Of course, TMZ got a hold of it. Yeah. And we addressed it. It's like, hey, we're aware of this note. That's the first thing. We're working through it. We actually found the person. We ran the person down that left the note, and we were able to just, go ahead and squash the rumor that somehow whoever is connected to the actual, the death is the one that, left the note. So there were so many instances like that.
It's important that you're aggressively going at these messages on a daily basis, because in the absence of a credible source, such as a GBI public affairs director coming forward with messaging, the only other voice is going to be the people that are out in the public, the trolls and the people that are putting disinformation. So by you being forward and being out there every day, you're the source of information, and you're protecting the investigation and the integrity of the organizations that you represent.
That's 100%, Robert, because I will say this also. One of the things that I have noticed is that in dealing with it, a lot of people say, oh, it's the media is doing this and that. But I mean, for the most part, sure, they have a job to do as well. But for us, it's not for us. The media is they report based on what comes in as important or critical, and we provide them the information. And if we give them information, they'll use it. But it's really the social media that spins out of control. And sometimes I see, agencies, they may address the mainstream media, but then they let the social media narrative just take its own course. Right. They just don't say anything. And these are agencies that have really strong, kind of standings. They have strong accounts with tons of followers. So you don't go in there and say, oh, it's just that they hadn't posted in the year. No, they just posted. And so the next time they try to tweet about some sort of traffic incident, people are like, but you never addressed the big, elephant in the room. So
very important. That's an excellent reminder, Nelly. Thank you for bringing that back up about them being, you can't forget either one. You've got to be able to do both, the mainstream media, your social media, and you've got to also be able to attack those posts that come forward with good, bad, or ugly.
that's right.
So you have your group, the Public Affairs Office has that dual role of being a legislative representative for the GBI. That's kind of a different thing for public information. What does being a legislative representative entail?
Yeah, that is different. I look around at counterparts in my state in Georgia and even around the nation, and there are probably not that many that are as active out there that have that dual role, but it's very equivalent to what a lobbyist would be, even though I don't call myself a lobbyist, I call myself a legislative liaison, but it's really similar. Is because I'm representing the agency under the Gold Dome during our state legislature. And so just like other groups that have laws that they try to get passed, we have agency legislation and their GBI bills. And I work with our state senators and our state representatives to try to get those through. I literally have to form the same types of, those relationships that we talk about, forming those relationships with the media and your other PIOs. And I have this other layer of forming these relationships with our legislators and other legislative liaisons and lobbyists, because, essentially we have agency bills that are going to help the GBI that we want to get through. So we'll find sponsors, we'll testify in committee meetings, and because we are under the executive branch of government, want to make sure that, of course, we get what we want to. If you want to change a law, somebody probably has to approve it. So we want to make sure that it's in line with the governor's office mission. But yeah, it's very, very fascinating. It's a whole different world, but sometimes there's a little bit of alignment. For instance, if you think about the Ahmaud Arbery case, well, even though we were involved in that case, obviously investigating it, but then shortly after that, because of that investigation, is how we have now a hate crime statute in our state. And so, sometimes I see how things that I deal with on the media side does cross over to the legislative side, and then the legislative side becomes, I would say, newsworthy. But the biggest thing that you kind of have to keep in mind for me is just that it's two different hats. You cannot allow whatever's going on the legislative side, because of course people are thinking, oh, that's the political end. But you got to be a person that can absolutely go into it saying, none of that, I can't let any of that affect the best decision that needs to be made to get information out to the public and working with the media. So, luckily I've been able to do that. But yeah, it's it's wild. I'm glad I have my Surface Pro to kind of carry around under the Gold Dome. So people like, when something breaks out, I'm like, I just tell the reporter, meet me at the Capitol. I'll do the interview here, or run the scene. I come back to the Capitol and put that hat back on. So yeah, it's crazy times, but I do enjoy it.
Wow, that's two different worlds colliding together. So that's a lot of work, Nelly. But that's amazing that you're able to keep the two separate. That's just an amazing amount of work to be able to balance that. So the next question that I have in there, we won't even bother with it because we already covered trolls and bots. So let's just go on. We'll go into the rapid fire questions here. So what's the last good book that you've read?
The last good book I read is actually The Happiness Advantage. Okay. It's something that, so a couple of me and some of my girlfriends that I went to college with, they said, hey, because I'll be honest with you, Robert, my kids are age 5, 7, and 9. I hadn't read in years. So I literally just started picking up books this year again. And so that's the last one. And it's just about your brain science and being positive. And I think in our world, I will say that it's been very beneficial. It's a good one. It's not one of those, I would say, where it's got all of this drama. It's probably a lot of just, based on research, but it was an interesting read.
Very cool. Binge-worthy TV show if you've had time to do any of that.
So recently I haven't had a lot of time to do it. But if I am, I'm multitasking anyway. But if I think over the years, and I mean, I can't really help it being, a chemist at heart, is probably Breaking Bad. We both had non-linear career paths. I went I went the legal way, but Breaking Bad and probably Sons of Anarchy and Mad Men. Those are like my top over the years.
Mad Men was one that my wife and I went through just a couple years ago. We like binged right through over COVID the entire what is it, 7, 8 seasons?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with you. All right, so what inspires you?
What inspires me? I would say that, when I think about it, probably I'm really inspired by the successes of just other people. I like being around people whose walking pace is my running pace. They just motivate me. So even if I see people or, run, some people have a friend who just seems like they run a marathon every single day. And so all of a sudden it's like, what, I might start running too. Or even in this industry, this field, they're just, these rock stars out there doing great work. And I think certainly just being around them influences me. So I would say, just being around those type of people.
Very cool. Do you have a personal motto?
Thinking about this, I would probably say, not really, but one of the things I noticed that I do say a lot, and I even said it this morning when my kids were fussing at the breakfast table over nothing, which is be kind.
Okay.
I just think be kind. It's simple, and it just wins. And even in this, in this profession in policing and police, community interactions and all of that. So
Don't we need more of that? Yeah, we need more be kind, definitely.
Yes.
I like that. All right, so if you could spend a day in someone else's shoes, whose would they be and why?
I don't have a person in mind, but I think something that I don't know that I would just like to do is just be one of those people that literally just is paid to travel and report back on these different trips.
That sounds fun.
I don't know how I need to apply for that or who I need to see to get recommended for that job, but I mean, hey, I just want you to pay me to travel. I'm kind of ready for that. I'm 21 years in, so I got a few years before retirement, but I've got some forfeited leave, and I'm like, that's definitely one of my next level career options there.
There you go. Okay, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be?
I recently was listening to a couple. It was a retired female GBI agent. We did a little chat with them at the GBI for Women's History Month. It was a virtual chat.
I saw that.
Yeah. And that was really fun. And she said these words, go for it. And then I heard it, I kept hearing it, go for it, go for it. And I just envisioned go for it on a billboard. And I mean, if you want to throw me up there with some really good makeup and hair, then I'll take that too. But just go for it. That's it.
I like that. That's definitely a good billboard sign. I like that. All right. So if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her?
You know what? It's something that I started doing recently, and I'm kicking myself because I'm 44 years old. And I'm like, why didn't I do this? And that's journaling. I mean, every single day I've got this habit streak thing that I'm doing where I've got like 8 different habits, and I'm like, how many days in a row? And I'm like on day 96 today of working out for at least 20 minutes every day, no white rice, no bread, no red meat, drinking X amount of water and journaling. And then there's some other things that I do too. But, just writing all this down, because what I've noticed, especially when, you go through like a roller coaster of emotions, you can kind of assess what went wrong, what kind of moved you. And then you start seeing trends. I'm like, ooh, every single time this happens, this is the response. And so it's just been cool over the past few months to kind of go back and read my journal and just kind of learn for myself and grow. And I'm like, man, if I could have done that, I could have been somewhere else.
And that's a good way to do self-care. And that's really important in this field, is they have some way to self-care, and that journaling definitely helps you to go back and look at, hey, this is what I went through and I'm okay.
That's right.
All right. So some final thoughts. Is there anything else you want to share?
I think my biggest takeaway would be, if I told you earlier about how I undervalue training. I just, you don't know what you don't know, but do not stop learning. I personally have listened to all 18 episodes of your podcast, and I've learned so much from that. When people share literature about the field, I read that literature. I go to training, and the network. Being part of that network, I of course plug the IACP PIO section, but I mean, just even that, in our region, we're meeting virtually every month. I'm going to Arlington, Texas for the training to see people, and you get to just share your best practices and you learn. But more than anything, it's just you have someone to lean on. I won't ever forget when I was dealing with one of my 100 crazy cases during 2020 that a friend from New York actually sent me some sweet chocolatey drink. It was like one Uber, but it was for someone in the network, in the PIO network, because they get it and they understand. And so I say jump in a network, whichever one you choose. I won't tell you, but jump in one and hang on tight. Don't let it go.
That's awesome. So Nelly, how can people best reach out for you? I will put it in the show notes, but how can they reach out to you if they want to connect?
So many ways. It's ridiculous. I'm LinkedIn fanatic. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Those are probably the top ways. And if you put in the show notes, you can find me. But
okay,
yeah, I'm big on that.
We will make sure we put that in the show notes. Nelly, I really appreciate you being on the show today, and I appreciate you taking time out. 3 kids that are under, what did you say, 10 or 11?
Under 10.
Okay, so I had that many years ago. They're all adults now and out of the house for the most part, but I feel your pain. I thank you so much for coming on the show and taking this time out after a busy workday. If there's anything I can ever do for you, please let me know.
Thank you, and likewise. You take care.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Nelly.
And that was Nelly Miles. Thanks for coming on the show.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.